OpenAI is saying it's a PhD level. Well, maybe it is, but not based on my testing and not based on my experience. It's not really that much more intelligent than 4.0. But what's the difference is the multimodal 400,000 tokens, and that's a big thing. The multimodal is amazing, where you can upload 2 or 3 or 5 different documents from different sources, and it's gonna make sense. What I'm playing around and using GPT-5 just to run competitor analysis for eCommerce prices on SKUs. So basically uploading 1000 SKUs, it does that perfectly. The difference between 5.0 and 4.0, it was not able to handle such large data and make sense of it.
The ironic thing I find is when people say that it's at a PhD level, in no way am I discounting the knowledge it takes and the grit it takes to get that, but I have met a lot of PhDs that are smart but don't have common sense in some cases, not always. To me, it's almost an ironic comparison because the issues I run into with AI, no matter the context size or how intelligent it supposedly is when it comes to like logic, thinking in multiple steps and how different ideas relate to each other.
At this present moment, the right balance is human supervision. That's pretty much it.
There's no video you can just watch and just become an expert. Unfortunately, like we're all learning here, and the best way to do it is literally just play around and customize it to what your needs are. Start simple. Don't blindly trust the LLMs to lead you in the right direction. Like you have to pilot the plane and keep it going in the right direction.
Hey everybody, we're back. I'm Igor Ilievski, and I have my man here, Micah Dixon. What's up, Micah? How's it been?
It's been good. No complaints. How about yourself?
How was the summer, dude?
Pretty good. I didn't get to spend as much time outside as I'd like. Busy working, but yeah, it's been fun.
Well, summer for me was fun. Took vacation to Greece, having a haircut, and some cool stuff. We got GPT-5 rolled out, and we have Gemini Nano Banana. So pretty exciting stuff. Have you had the time to kind of play around with those two tools?
The Chat GPT, yes, I don't use it that much, but obviously I've been trying to use it a little bit more because the new model came out. So if I'm being honest, it seems like it's almost like a step back, but maybe I didn't play around with it enough. Like I used obviously the agent mode, tried a few things, wasn't that impressed. But yeah, maybe I didn't give it enough of a chance, but maybe you have.
To be honest, I'm not impressed as well. It was hyped like the next big thing. OpenAI is saying it's a PhD level. Well, maybe it is, but not based on my testing and not based on my experience. It's not really that much more intelligent than 4.0. But what's the difference is the multimodal and the 400,000 tokens, and that's a big thing. The multimodal is amazing, where you can upload 2 or 3 or 5 different documents from different sources, and it's gonna make sense from all of them. But I'm saying uploading 4 or 5, I'm saying documents. 400,000 tokens means a lot. What I'm playing around, I'm using ChatGPT-5 just to run competitor analysis for eCommerce prices on SKUs. So basically uploading 1000 SKUs, hey, please check the prices on these SKUs, find me competitors, and give me a marketing analysis and marketing strategy. So it does that perfectly. And the difference between 5.0 and 4.0 back in the old one, it was not able to handle such large data and make sense of it. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Just to make sure that people understand the context window, like I understand what you're talking about, but basically it's the amount of documents or tokens it could consume and process and work logically off of.
Absolutely. Like uploading 1000 SKUs of documents, a large data, I'm talking at least like 2 megabytes or more. So back in with 4.0, that's not possible. You're just going to break out. However, in 5.0, just export your SKUs from your Shopify store, drop them in ChatGPT 5.0, and simple prompt, explore Google Shopping Marketplace and find me my competitors, their pricing, and give me a marketing strategy how to sell more. That's pretty much it.
So at what point do you think that breakdown happens? Because the ironic thing I find is when people say that it's at a PhD level, and in no way am I discounting the knowledge it takes and the grit it takes to get that. But I have met a lot of PhDs that are smart but don't have common sense in some cases, not always. And so, like, to me, it's almost an ironic comparison because the issues I run into with AI, no matter the context size or how intelligent it supposedly is when it comes to like logic, thinking in multiple steps and how different ideas relate to each other. I don't know if that's something you've run into, but like when it's just a point blank question, yeah, you're going to get a PhD level answer. But where do you think that breakdown happens?
So,
and why?
if I'm hearing it correctly, and I think I am, I'm going to take a step back. So I was on a kind of webinar yesterday. A group of AI professionals from Panama were kind of trying to explain to the audience the difference between agentic AI, agentic AI systems, and so on and so forth, which turned out to be how to use Langflow and how to use N8 or make.com, things like that. And that's great, how to make all those flows, how to connect things. It's amazing. However, what was confusing and what nobody actually realizes, it's one thing to use an LLM and the power of an LLM like GPT-5, the reasoning power, the PhD reasoning power. However, to make that LLM to be trained, fine-tuned to understand a specific niche or specific role, that's a different topic. And in terms of the Panama situation, the webinar, there's no way to fine-tune an LLM in a agentic AI unless you actually build your own environment for it. When it comes to GPT-5, the reasoning power of a PhD is there. However, in order to your question, in order to make a really nice professional report like a CMO would do, right? Then a fine-tuning is required. System instructions, 100%. You need to give the system instructions in the model itself, like what to do with data, how to understand the data, but that's not enough. In order to make a real PhD level, examples needs to be provided, real data needs to be provided. So when it analyzes the data, it understands it and can make a sense like a CMO will do. So, yeah.
So when you're talking about an agentic model, just for the audience, for me, the simplest way to explain it is to imagine handing a document off to a team of people. You maybe have like the orchestrator agent that is directing the other agents to process a certain document and give feedback. And so maybe one has a specific knowledge of research on how to prepare one document or piece of the document, then another agent at this figurative table is looking at a different point of view, providing its actions on it, and it goes around the table, and then the orchestrator kind of approves it or denies it, and then sends it back around.
That will be a agentic system, that when one LLM is the orchestrator, or I would say the supervisor, and everybody's just working around. But again, those are all LLMs that are not fine-tuned, and they use the reasoning power that the LLM itself has and the knowledge base. 4.0, whatever the cut is, it was April 2024, if I'm not wrong, 03 million, so on and so forth, goes with 5.0. The reasoning power is much larger, much PhD level than 4.0. However, the specific knowledge that comes to, in the example I'm using, to prepare a CMO level report does not have the knowledge. So if you want to fine-tune it and use it to day to create and send out to your client, hey, your SKUs are great, but your prices are off, then you need to fine-tune it. And you can...
I guess you have to find that balance, because like I'll talk to founders that obviously want to use AI, which is just used, synonymously now. What it really is LLM. I wouldn't really consider AI until it's, I guess a lot smarter than it is, to put it lightly, I guess. But so what's that balance for someone that wants to use AI as a way to make their business more productive? Obviously, there's one direction of that, and that's automation, operations, and using AI to assist with that. And then there's another side of things where people will just put up like a custom GPT and say, hey, this can be your business advisor. It's trained off of so-and-so. But really all it is a knowledge doc that they put together of someone's book, right? And so there's going to be times where it hallucinates. It can give you the wrong answers. It could actually steer you in a completely wrong direction, where you're going to end up hitting the iceberg like Titanic if you're not careful and being the true captain of the ship. And so, like, how do you find that balance of the founder wants to use it, but maybe they're not at the technical level to be able to put together a truly smart AI, like with a vector database or some sort of RAG that can actually pull the data in a correct way that can be actionable. And even then, like, you still need to be the captain of the ship. So, like, how do they find that balance of not outsourcing too much, but also outsourcing just enough where they can, stay
right
at an advantage?
At this present moment, the right balance is human supervision. That's pretty much it. You can use the agentic system but always comes to the final output to be supervised by human. That's the best recommendation that I would give right now at this moment. Maybe in a year it's going to be different. For example, founders and the automation systems that we are building internally, it's all Langflow type of workflows. It may be N8 workflows and so on and so forth. Where we are lacking the ability to fine tune, but do I need to fine tune it for a simple ops workflow? Send a welcome email, receive the orders, send the shipping, and so on and so forth. Whatever the workflow is that you need, that you can fully automate with Langflow or N8, and that's really helpful for any founder of ecom or any other website. Something more professional level, like a CMO type of reports, that will absolutely require fine tuning and even building on apps using Python and RAG system and whole application for it. Will that replace a full team of marketing at some point? Probably.
I've heard instances of people taking their quarterly P&Ls and like uploading it to an untrained doc an untrained GPT or Gemini Gem or something like that. And they just say, hey, you're a business advisor specializing in blah, blah, blah. What should I do next quarter? Do you think that will go well?
I will not take that advice 100%. It will be based on my experience and testing on that kind of advice. This is around 70% accurate. The more data I give, even can be a custom GPT or just a simple prompt. The more data I provide in that prompt, is it a one shot or two shots or multi shots on it? The more data I give and the more memory I upload is going to be much more precise. Any advice should be taken with a trunk of salt on top of it. Good direction might be a pretty amazing advice that you haven't thought about it. But again, human supervision, and once you execute, go for it, test it, play around, and maybe if you have the resources, build a fine-tuned model around it. Oh, absolutely, it's going to be helpful for your business. GPT-5 has the reasoning power to understand, and it's actually much faster and cheaper than 4.0 with a much larger reasoning power and much larger token size or file size input data. And 100% is going to be helpful. For example, you said just drop in the P&L and make sense of it. But for 100% accuracy, I would not say 100%, let's say 95% accuracy, fine-tune model on GPT-5, 100% is going to give you pretty well good direction. What to do next, what your strategy is, where to cut on cost, or what kind of marketing strategies, channels you should put your products on. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I personally have always been a solo operator. My personality type, and everyone's different, but my personality type is if I'm going to come and speak to someone else about an idea, it's usually after I've already thought it through and have kind of thought of all of the different ways. And then maybe I'll present it to someone else so they can provide like devil's advocate, poke holes at the theory and stuff like that. For the most part, it's been worked out mostly in my head. What I do enjoy about Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT is just throwing those ideas out to them and having them kind of all discuss it. But ultimately, I'm looking for an idea or an angle I haven't thought of, but I'm not going to let them run the direction. And there was a video, I wish I could remember the name of the person, but I was watching it a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about an analogy of new pilots that are learning to be commercial pilots. The more experienced ones will tell them, hey, no matter how advanced the autopilot gets, it may feel like it can fly itself, but you fly the plane always. And so, like, to me, it was like such a wake up call of like, no matter what you do and how smart these PhD level AI models get, you have to fly the plane and make those decisions. Not that they're wrong, but for people that I'll talk to and they say AI is going to replace our jobs, they're taking away all the thinking jobs. I'm like, you haven't used AI enough, I don't think, because I experience on a daily basis catching it tripping up on itself, hallucinating, or going in circles where I'll pitch an idea. They'll tell me why it shouldn't be done that way. We'll work on it for like 45 minutes and get back around to where we started. And I'll be like, that's my original idea. So it's like, you have to be really careful about what you're trusting.
Micah, what's going on right now? The AI is advancing. I would say that kind of the advancement level kind of slowed down in the past couple of months. We're not going wow every 3 months, and which is a good thing. But why, in my opinion, slowing down is because the data is there, but the fine tuning is not there. All right. So can it replace every single job out there in the future? Probably. If somebody has enough data from experts, human experts, I don't know, CMOs, CEOs, even us, to train an LLM how to do their job properly, I'm 100% sure that an AI can replace a pilot, a CEO, a founder, any job. However, that's not going to happen that fast. Simple jobs, probably.
This is going to get a little bit out on a tangent, so maybe we'll cut this part. But this is something I've thought about, is in the lower levels of LLMs where they're not quite smart yet, right? People are using them to produce content, and that content is getting put out there on the internet, which is just getting more and more exponentially out there in a public knowledge base. If the LLMs are training upon the old data over and over and over, it's just a massive hallucination over years and years and years. So like if there's a public opinion out there that was actually established because of early LLMs putting out articles, and then those articles get used at the bottom of the knowledge base as it's continually building upon each other, that's something I have wondered if that's going to cause issues.
Like more and more data. So the data is there and actually it's causing an issue. That's why it's slowing down. In the past year or so, with the abilities of agentic RAG and scraping the internet, data is there. However, let me put it different. If you have a super intelligent kid that has tons of data, the kid itself can see the data, can know the data, but cannot make sense from the data. This goes to any Gen AI, like generic intelligence AI that they were supposed to be with ChatGPT-5, to any intelligence of the LLM. You need to teach this kid what this means. So we actually, as users, teaching ChatGPT every day.
Yeah.
The single button like on ChatGPT-5 is a very good way to give feedback if their output is correct or the input was wrong. So that's how it's learning. However, the more and more we learn AI, the more and more people get into the game, and the more we use it in specific industries, the more intelligent would not just GPT, Grok, Anthropic, Cloud, Gemini is going to be in that specific area. So when it comes to general intelligence, it's going to take a while. ChatGPT-5, as I just mentioned, was supposed to be the next level. generic intelligence, and they just announced it's going to be PhD level. Maybe it is, but it's definitely not generic intelligence. And I think it might be a couple of more years till we get there, but we will get there. We will get there where the AI is going to be actually intelligent in many, many areas to a level of a PhD or something like that. Replacing specific jobs, different story. How to replace a CMO, fine-tuning, providing data, having somebody actually train the models on the job specifics of a CMO, right? How are you doing your marketing report? How are you analyzing your product pages? How are you defining your brand positioning? That's not something that, ChatGPT or Anthropic or even Gemini does has the general knowledge how that looks like, but actually doing it on a professional level and step by step and what's good, what's bad, what's a good result, what's a bad result, strategy-wise, execution-wise, that's actually what I refer to by fine-tuning the model so it can do the job as a human would. That will take some time. Industry by industry, specifically now industry in online, brand positioning, in making online sales and so forth, it's not there yet. The example I gave you with just running competitor analysis, it's simple enough for GPT to understand that. It's numbers, it has the reasoning power, has the tokens power, it can make sense, but will I take the advice from it and execute upon it in terms of strategies, in terms of marketing campaign, and tie a budget behind of 10,000 a day? Definitely not.
Well, some people do. So I guess that's the real question is, like, obviously there's thousands and thousands of videos about AI and how to implement it in your business. A lot of it's clickbait, unfortunately. So I guess the way I would like to look at it for those listening is like, what is the safe level that you could go up to DIY without knowing too much and without getting completely off the deep end on it? Obviously, pretty much everyone's using it for helping draft emails, maybe simple things, simple reports, simple invoices, simple proposals. But like, at what point is the threshold where, okay, you need to at least add instructions in a knowledge base, and then if you want to go beyond that, you need to do this?
At any point, instructions are crucial for a good result. The better you are in writing the instructions, or what would I say, prompt engineering, the better output. And prompt engineering, I don't want to label it, but technically it's a form of art. Yeah. And there are a couple of techniques that you can find online. You can get, classes about it. But at the end of the day, you need to understand what are you telling the LLM to do and what data you're giving it. Again, the example, the analogy with a small child, super intelligent child. What data are you giving to this child and what are you telling him to do? And here's the question. Does this child actually know what are you talking about?
Yeah. A simple example of prompt engineering is when you're asking Gemini to help with a legal document and you get the response saying it can't help with that because it's not an attorney. And then you say, actually, this is for a college program and this is for a paper. And then all of a sudden it unlocks and will provide you the legal document. Well, that's a very simple example of how you can engineer a prompt.
So it depends on the rules that each LLM has, Gemini versus OpenAI versus Anthropic and so on and so forth. But OpenAI will always try to force and give you the answer. Why? Just to spend the extra token and get the money from it. However, when it does that, and this you can see this across different models as well, the term is LLM hallucination. So the more specific you are, the more data you're giving to again, the term, does this child knows what you're talking about? So the more specific you are and the more information you provide, so the small kid, super intelligent small kid knows what you're talking about, the less hallucination you can get. And there are several techniques. You can lower the level of hallucination. The one I prefer to, and I don't know if people actually use this or know this, I simply ask the LLM, please reply back what's your level of confidence you have on your response in percentages, and explain why. So that's the simplest prompt you can get. So if it's around 95, that's pretty much okay, usually, but it's like below 90, that means that the LLM kind of hallucinated pretty much all the data that he's not understanding, or the information that you didn't provide it, it's going to make up.
Yeah, I think, and again, going back to the people that say how smart they are and how close they are to being smarter than the average operator, for example, I think a fun exercise would be for at least 2 weeks, whenever you're asking a question that's at least complicated and requires some reasoning, or something that maybe is on a PhD level, ask it on ChatGPT, ask it on Anthropic, Claude, and see how different the results are. Sometimes they're going to be really close, but one will pick up something that the other did not. And then you can say, well, I got this report from my data analyst. Why did you miss that?
Research.
And you go back and forth. And it ultimately you end up with something great. But for people that are just like, I'm just using this, and they just trust it blindly on first pass, that's a bad idea. It's a very bad idea.
Are you referring to like when you're trying to create a report, or you're trying to make something like a, I don't know, new feature, or just researching something? In that
All the above. Usually researching. It could be a tech stack, like how things are communicating. And obviously you have limitations on when the data cutoff was for when it was trained upon. So like throwing in Perplexity into the mix that can get more recent data, but Perplexity messes up a lot too. They all do, unfortunately.
I love Perplexity. I'm not
Me too.
But it's my go-to tool for whatever I need to research.
Same. Same.
The research, the search is so deep than anything else. And it gives me ability, which I like the most, to change the LLM model behind it and make different outcomes from it. So the research will be the RAG database, the input I'm giving it. Again, you need to be very clever on the prompting. You just need to make sure the research is correct. So the Perplexity has the right data research for you. That can be like days of research.
Yeah, Perplexity seems a lot more, I guess, finicky. You do have to be a lot more careful with what you're providing it.
Then the actual summarization of the data, or the making sense of the research, I love just changing the LLM models and seeing the difference, how Claude is reasoning, how GPT is reasoning, how Solar is reasoning the Perplexity native model, and so on and so forth. And there's a huge difference. My go-to is Solar when it comes to reasoning Perplexity research. It's trained, it's fine-tuned on their methods and algorithms. However, depending on the tasks, if I'm actually asking for help to research a code, then Claude is the go-to tool. If it's reasoning for some kind of I would say academic data and making more sense, that GPT-5 and so on and so forth. But overall, the topic that I wanted to touch base is how operators can utilize all those tools to make their lives easier. And Perplexity is absolutely every day. For any solution that you might need, or any answer you might need, GPT is there, is great. As you said, it can do its own research, but it's the difference level of the deep research in GPT-5 and Perplexity is huge. And
it's not.
And number one, it's the cost price is different. GPT-5 can do research, but the cost is going to be around $20 to actually use it per month, just the deep research, if I'm not wrong on the price. And Perplexity, you can actually get it for free and use it 20 researchers per day, which is good enough to use it. What I'm sorry about is that you cannot connect a service as Perplexity in agentic type of mode yet, which would be amazing. For example, the example I gave you, let's turn Perplexity into a CMO, right?
Yeah.
Perplexity can do the research for you.
Correct.
cannot access Google data. Maybe if you force them, but not directly. But Perplexity can, number one, accept the data that you provided by just simply exporting from Shopify, use different model, do additional research, actually visiting your competitors' websites for you. And that's a report that I can guarantee you is going to be much more precise than GPT-5, no matter the PhD level it has. Can I do this in a agentic type of environment using Langflow or maybe N8 or Make? Yes, I can do it. Can a simple ecom director do it? Yes.
Right.
It's so easy. But what is wrong with Langflow and N8 and Make.com and so on and so forth? You'll get the workflow going. It's going to work. But if something's go wrong, or if you need to edit something, the UX and you are an UX and UI expert, you know what I'm saying. If you need to find what is wrong with the workflow, there is no way you can figure it out.
Not in an easy way. Yeah, not something
like arrows here and there. So the UX and UI on the current agentic type of workflows creation systems like Langflow and N8, it's super complicated and super not user friendly, even for me. I'll maybe get focused myself for 5 hours and I'll get it done. But if I come back to it tomorrow,
as soon as something changes or the workflow and execution stops, like you have to go digging around, like you have to tinker on it. Unfortunately, you can use the Perplexity API with the MCP server and set something up like that, just like you described. But for the average operator, it's not going to be a good use of time, probably.
Yeah. So I would suggest people to just play around. Most user friendly in terms of UX and UI, I would just recommend Make.com. It's maybe it's not that powerful as Langflow, but it will do a simple job, much easier. Anybody can do it virtually in 5 minutes. And
I've personally seen people get stuck a lot on Make, mainly because the frustration I have with Make is you can't send the test data. And so to explain to an operator to go get a JSON file, format it, and then put it in as test data to then process through the sequence, that's not as easy. I mean, I understand Zapier's high price, but at least you can send past data in and connect it that way. So as far as simplicity goes, I don't know why Make.com has not added that, at least.
In terms of output on JSON data?
Not the output, but when they're first building it for the first time ever, you're going to make your trigger or your webhook that starts the Make.com sequence.
Okay.
But unlike Zapier, you make your trigger event and it could pull your past Calendly event, for example. Or if it's not a Calendly, it could be processing a Google Drive edition, and then that's the trigger event. But the point is, if you do that on Zapier, you can pull the most recent Calendly event. Whereas on Make, you have to go manually submit your own from the start. It doesn't have start data that you can make those connections. Zapier, since they're so user-friendly, it's a lot easier. They'll have the test data right there where you can just connect the fields. It's very easy to map.
I agree.
Whereas Make, you have to do JSONs. N8N is like that too, but I'm not using that as comparison because no one's going to be using that unless they're super into this stuff.
There are limitations.
Yeah.
There's so far, I would not say anything perfectly working, but the more you try, the more you play around it, the more efficient you are as an operator, and the better use you can do of the tool.
So what's the first thing that they should do? Obviously, emails and simple stuff aside, that's been covered on videos already.
The first thing that any operator should do in terms of using agentic type of tools as
It could be agentic, yeah,
Okay.
or it could even be manual agentic for a while until they understand how they kind of communicate with each other. What types of tasks should they be comfortable outsourcing? Being careful about instructions and knowledge base. And when you say play around, like I'm just saying, maybe we should try to define what that playing around is. What should be the first things they start playing around with? That's not going to totally derail the direction of their business in the process.
The minimum thing they can do that's going to make their lives easier is just make the reporting on the day-to-day operations goes in their inbox in the morning, in a nicely put up report, like, hey sir, this is how
Mm-hmm.
much money you made yesterday. Just jumpstart the day. So that's very simple to do. Connect to all your data points. It will be Shopify, with AdWords, Facebook when you're running campaigns in an agentic type of mode with not even fine-tuned LLMs, just simple ChatGPT-5 or Anthropic or Claude using even Make. You can get that email report every morning while drinking your coffee to see where you made money, where you lost money. Again, check it, double check it once you're in the office, but that's the first step
Yeah.
I would do. And I would recommend absolutely to do it. What about
Yeah.
you?
Knowledge is power. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the first thing. I like the first thing I like to do, mainly because you're right, because I've had that one automated so long it didn't even pop in my mind, because to me that's just like a bare minimum. You're going to look at that daily report. The next thing I like to do is look at all the processes that I don't like doing, or I think that an employee is spending time on, that their time is worth other things. And so, like, how can we take those things away? And a lot of times it depends on the employee or the contractor. If you're suggesting, hey, what are things that you find super easy, they might get defensive and think you're trying to like replace them. But you have to frame it in a way of, hey, we value your time, you're smart, and we want you focused on the things that are really important and are fun for you. So I'm not trying to like attack your position or replace you, but what are those things that if you could snap your fingers and never do again, what are those? And just asking questions like that, not just to yourself, but to them. And then you can start to see, okay, usually it's something boring. Usually it's something that's repetitive. And it's something that ultimately an AI could probably
Price
do.
updates, product names changes. Yeah, that's very simple to do actually with Make, like virtually.
Yes. Yeah.
Virtually,
Yeah.
that's a simple webhook, even connected to Slack if you want.
Yeah.
Send the command to Slack, and we have done this for clients as well. Send the instruction to Slack. Hey, change the price on SKUs. Copy paste, and it just goes.
Yeah. And to give a little bit more specific action, I guess I like to start from the very beginning of the client experience. So the first conversation that happens, record of that if it's in text, recorded calls, take those transcripts. I call it context snowballing. I don't know if that's an actual thing, but you're just snowballing the context of all the client conversations, using LLMs to process the data, summarize it, maybe create a disk profile or something about how those people communicate. And so it assists.
Well, like a psychological psychographic profile.
Yeah. It's not something that's like super accurate, but it does give the idea from like handoff from an SDR to a closer of how their personality type is. Are they really gruff? Do they like to spend time chit chatting, or do they want to just get to the point? And what are the things about the conversations early on in the process? Was there any identifiers of they really value family time? They value being able to take vacations, things like that you can focus on, rather than maybe another person doesn't care about family because they're an only kid, their parents are around, their only drive is to get a GTR. Everyone's different. It's like having that knowledge ahead of time. It gets into the CRM. You take all that data and keeps putting it into the CRM, right?
So funny that you mentioned this. I'm actually using psychographic profile analysis for years
Yeah.
when we're doing HR, and also
Yeah.
meetings and so on and so forth. But I'm using a tool, and this is a totally different topic. I don't want to go into it, but it's called Crystal.io. It does an amazing job.
Really? That's cool. This is for hiring?
Like it can go negotiations, sales. It's very fine-tuned models to analyze social data, posting, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on and so forth, and give analysis and gives you actual tricks and tips.
Yeah.
Talk to the person, what to say, what not to say. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's even a simple model like that, if you want to test, do your salespeople even use it? That's a big question. So like instead of immediately investing in some expensive tool, just build something simple, because like you do need that information anyways. So you might as well, if you're going to be playing around and learning things, just take the transcripts, use an LLM, process it, and spit it out into your CRM. And then you have the data, and you could see if you work with it. That's a simple first thing you could implement to get on your journey of systematizing things. And then the next step would be putting that into a spreadsheet or some sort of segmentation. I mean, there's lots of ways that it can go. I mean, there's so many unlimited ways.
I love using Gemini 2.5 in my Google Drive. It's like doing all my job for me.
Yeah.
Please get this mess cleaned.
Yeah.
All right, Micah. It's good topics. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think that the main takeaway is there's no video you can just like watch and just become an expert. Unfortunately, like we're all learning here, and the best way to do it is literally just play around and customize it to what your needs are. That's kind of the moral of what I heard. Start simple. Don't blindly trust the LLMs to lead you in the right direction. Like you have to pilot the plane and keep it going in the right direction.
Why not? Okay, it's a great episode. We didn't touch base on nano banana, but that will be a good topic for next episode.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, thank you, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye.